Stakeholder.
In gambling, an independent party with whom each of those who make a wager deposits the money or counters wager.
A person with an interest or concern in something, especially a business.
In emergency management, any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival and recovery of a given community. You.
Welcome to Stakeholder Prepping.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you are the stakeholder in your own survival. We are your hosts. My name is Chris.
And I'm AC. And in this episode, we're going to talk about bug out locations. And this episode is a continuation of a couple recent episodes. If you remember, we chatted about the decision of when to bug in and bug out. And then we talked with Alex about bug out vehicles. And on a side note, I hope that most people listening feel like all of our episodes are really just one big continuation of the preparedness journey. Like, our goal is to make every episode a building block for you. So sure, like, not every single episode is going to be relevant to every single person. I get that. But I really hope that we deliver at least one piece of solid, actionable, timeless intel to you, like, every episode. I hope you get one thing every episode.
I agree with that, AC. That's 100% right. That's been our goal since day one. It's not cheap, and it's not really super easy for us to put in the research and deliver info like this to you every week. And hopefully we are achieving our goal of that solid, actionable, timeless intelligence. So it doesn't matter what episode you pick up on, you're going to get something out of it. And like you mentioned, a continuation of previous episodes, I would say that this episode, probably more than some others, is also a continuation of the risk matrix, which we just keep going back to. So before you can even start to think about your bug out location, you need to kind of analyze your own personal risk matrix and decide what the highest probability threats are that you need to plan for and be able to bug out away from. I mean, we could sit here and tell you that a pristine, well-stocked lake on top of a mountain is the best place to be, but if you've got somebody in your group with fish allergies or altitude sickness problems, I mean, that's got to be on your risk matrix as well, and that doesn't really help you bug out.
Yeah, that's funny. That's actually a really good point. And we'll talk a little bit about location, but you're right. Even weather patterns can play into this. For example, if you have nuclear fallout or a chemical spill high up on your risk matrix, then your bug out location shouldn't be on the leeward side or the downwind side of your prevailing wind models, because then you're just bugging out to certain death. So now, before we get started, one thing that I hear from a lot of preppers, and I would probably even consider myself in this group, is the I'm never bugging out mindset. There are a lot of people out there, definitely a few of you listening. And like I said, I'm not shaming anybody, because I am firmly in this camp as well. There are a lot of people that say, I'm never bugging out. I have everything I need, and I have a defensible location, and I'm far from people, etc. I get that. But what if your house gets struck by lightning and it burns to the ground? Or, what if there's a nuclear event, or a power plant melts down, or something more sinister and the prevailing winds are headed right back at you? Or, what if there's the train derailment full of toxic burning chemicals that are headed your way? Or even like the deep impact / Armageddon asteroid type event that appears to be headed your way. You can't just say, nope, I'm never ever leaving, like a stubborn toddler, because that's just not the prepper way. You have to be able to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And also, Chris, do you have an opinion on Deep Impact versus Armageddon? Do you?
So, one, Our bug out plan is to just call Bruce Willis and tell him to fix it.
You get just a bunch of drillers and Steve Buscemi and just have them come over and fix whatever the problem is.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and have Steve Buscemi get back into his firefighting days and fix
Right.
it all for us. But um, as far as Deep Impact versus Armageddon, Armageddon to me is a lot more entertaining. Deep Impact is a lot more realistic, in my opinion.
Yep.
But the new movie, Greenland,
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was actually very well done, aside from the mistakes that were made in it. Like, why the fuck would you ever leave the medicine critical for your child with that child?
That's just one of those things they have to put some kind of plot hole in there to keep you thinking. Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I am definitely the person that's always yelling at the movie or yelling at the TV, telling them to pick up the gun. You know, like, yeah, people
Yeah,
just
yeah.
they just do dumb shit like that. I get that. But I think you're exactly right. Yeah, Armageddon, I was more engaged with that movie, but you're right. Deep Impact was probably a little more like
Yes.
kind of how it would go down, right?
And of course, you got Aerosmith singing about Liv Tyler and whatnot. But
Yeah, the video
I actually,
was great. Sure.
if we're going to go for realism in movies, there's a movie on Amazon called EMP 333 Days. And it is a very, very dry movie. There's not a lot of dialogue, but holy shit.
Yeah,
It's
good one.
terrifying.
Really? Yeah, we should do an episode on the apocalyptic movies. I mean, The Road was my solid one, but 28 Years Later's coming out, right? I haven't seen
I
it.
cannot wait.
I'm gonna
It'll actually be out by the time this episode drops.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I would like to maybe do the trilogy of the days, months, weeks, years later thing.
That
might
would be
kinda
fun.
cool. So anyway, so let's break this down into a few different categories to make this consumable, and then maybe we just kind of go back and forth on the different like bug out location-y stuff. Does that work for you?
Yeah, it seems to be a good way for us to do these types of episodes. I mean, the back and forth understanding we're coming from different perspectives. But first, how about we set up our parameters?
You and your parameters. I knew you were going to do that.
Yes, we have
Always
to
got
set
to
our
put the
definitions.
guardrails up. Yep, I'm never bowling with you.
If I don't put the guardrails up, I'm going to end up in 6 lanes down from Sunday. So
Totally down a rabbit hole. Okay, what are the parameters? I like it.
So for this, we're going to assume that this is a location that you're going to leave your primary residence for, and we're also going to assume that this isn't a friend or family member's home. So
Okay.
we have to assume that this is a location that you've chosen for you and your family or your group. We're also going to make this realistic. We're not going to say the best place to bug out is a fully stocked missile silo with a lifetime supply of MREs. And we're not going to say drive down to Starbase in Brownsville and ask Elon for a trip on the rocket ship when he bugs out to Mars. We're not going to say anything like that. So we're going to try to keep this as realistic and grounded as we can.
Okay. All very valid points. And we're definitely not going to tell you to go to the secret government facility in Antarctica where the New World Order is going to rebuild after they use their depopulation space lasers on all the non-blue roofs.
Okay there, Alex Jones.
That's
But
my best Alex Jones. I can't stay in
it
Alex
was
Jones'
good.
character
It was
that long.
solid.
Yeah.
It was solid. But yeah, selecting a bug out location is one of the most critical decisions that any prepper can really make. It's not about finding a spot in the woods, because it does require actually pretty careful consideration of numerous factors to ensure your safety, sustainability, accessibility when it does really matter and the metal meets the meat.
Yeah, those are all valid points. So first up, I guess really you need to know whether or not you're going to own this location or find somewhere that you don't have to own, but you could still like bug out to if you need to. And this is huge. This is a really big piece of it. Maybe not the biggest piece, but you're going to need to decide if your bug out location is a place that you own or like a place in the wilderness that you're just going to squat when shit hits the fan. And I'm not just talking about some unattainable, cabin in the woods, or like you talked about, the missile silo full of MREs. There are actually a lot of very affordable pieces of land all over the country that would be perfect for this kind of thing if you know where to look. And I've done this myself. If you go to like somewhere like Land Watch, there are really nice large pieces of property for sale all over that usually have some kind of CC&Rs or building restrictions. So people can't build what they want to on it, but they'd be a perfect place to store your cache of equipment, and do everything except build there. So that kind of makes the land undesirable to other people, and that's why it is kind of affordable. I'll be 100% honest with you. I bought a piece of land, um, in the Pacific Northwest, high desert, acre of land, $3,500, and it's
What?
I'm telling you, and this is like an accessible on a road. It's just not desirable. It's in the high desert. It's not by anything cool. No one wants to be there. In the winter, the water gets hard. But we'll talk about why that's not actually a bad thing for a bug out location. So, in this bug out scenario, that kind of piece of land may be priceless. And it's also important to consider, like, going in on this property with other like-minded people with your group. You can pool your resources. If you've got 4 or 5 friends, maybe a $10,000 or $20,000 piece of property isn't totally out of the question. Maybe there is a structure there or something you can build, maybe something small. I've seen a lot of CC&Rs where you can't build anything bigger than 200 square feet. Like, that's a really common one. So maybe it's as simple as a level concrete pad to park your RV or your bug out vehicle on. And I've seen a lot of people do this. I have a lot of friends that have done this. It's kind of like buying your own campsite where there'll be rules about building or rules about how often you can use it. But in an apocalyptic event, this can be priceless. So you can think of this as a campsite that you own or even an investment property. So, you know, you need to check out some of the zoning restrictions, understand any of the local building codes, the zoning laws, the restrictions, the CC&Rs, all that. But um, if owning something is just not in the cards, you still have a ton of options and you have a lot of decisions to make. So even if this is just a place where you're going to park your vehicle when something happens, you still need to have a plan.
I completely agree. And on that point, I know I recently read about something on a prepper blog. I would have to find the link if I can, if it's still
Hmm.
up. But somebody purchased every 150 miles along a particular interstate. You know those little turnoffs where the clover leaves happen, or uh, they
Yeah,
have the
sure.
little turnoffs. They purchased that land because it's usually either agro or commercial based, and they didn't build anything on it. But every 150 miles along their bug out route, they have their own cache, and it's privately owned.
Oh, that's genius. I was just thinking about that. I've seen stuff by me recently where it's these little like slivers of land that are for sale, but they're too small to be a buildable property. But you're right. If you own the land and you can, under this rock, 5 feet under it, there's a PVC tube with a bunch of 30 carbine in it or something. That's a great idea.
Of course, it's sturdy carbine. It's never fuel or food or medicine or anything like that.
It's also P38 can openers. It's P38 can
Yes.
openers and 30 carbine. There's nothing else you need. Maybe a tarp. Maybe a tarp.
So, as part of that, yeah, having a plan and every step of prepping is imperative for this. For me, another kind of important piece of bug out location site selection is that safety, security, defensibility. So,
100%.
when you're looking at picking a place, and this is all stuff that you can tabletop exercise or do on your laptop at home, distance from population centers. A primary goal is going to be to get away from urban chaos. The farther from those major cities and heavily populated areas you are, the better. But you kind of want to aim for a buffer zone of 50 to 100 miles if possible. If you're in one of those areas where 100 miles away, you're just running into the next suburb of the next big town, maybe in the middle of that is not the greatest idea. Look north, south, east, west around there. Isolation and low profile. So the location should not be easily visible from especially populated roads like interstate, major highways. Sometimes you can get tree cover and it's not really visible from the air or satellite view. That's that gray man principle applying to blend in.
No.
Don't build some $35 million mansion that's an architectural masterpiece as your bug out site. You're just going to draw attention and everybody's going to want to gravitate towards you when shit hits the fan.
Sure.
Um, Another one, and this one can be tough to find, defensible terrain. So you're looking for things like natural barriers, steep hills, rivers or creeks, thick forests. You want to kind of look for an area that if you treat it correctly, it can funnel access and make defense easier. So elevated positions with clear lines of sight are going to be advantageous, but you can't always get everything all at once. Utah has a lot of areas that have homesteads built up on hills. Very, very easy to see somebody coming. The downside of that, it's Utah. You can't really grow as much there because you don't have as long or as warm of a growing season. You're at altitude. You're pretty far north when it comes to the planet and hemisphere. So you're going to have a shorter growing season. You have to accommodate for that. And then always running a threat assessment. And that threat assessment is going to be considering potential threats from desperate people, potential looters, natural disasters that are specific to the region. If your bug out location is Southport, Miami, Tampa, you're going to have to deal with hurricanes. If your bug out location is California, you may have to deal with earthquakes. If you're looking in the middle of South Dakota, you may have to deal with a nuclear strike on the missile silos that are already up there. So which way do you want to go? What's your priority? But let's take a look at community when we're talking about a bug out location. While isolation is key, having a trusted, like-minded community nearby can be a massive asset for mutual assistance, security, especially if you know these people and they're properly vetted. Because remember, we've always said that people really are the problem. So if you remove yourself from those large groups of people and get out of the population dense cities, then you have chosen not to participate in the most dangerous part of any SHTF event. You've chosen to get away from the problem, which is people.
People are the problem every time. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. People are the problem. And one way to look at this, I kind of want to touch on this and then we can hop back and forth. But
Okay.
if you have a community, 5, 10, 15, 20 people that you trust and everybody's willing to pitch in and build your own little communal hotspot, have you ever looked at schools or public buildings that are now for sale?
No, I mean, I guess I've seen them. There is a lot of that, retail-y, spacey stuff for those old public buildings. You're right. You do see a lot more of that for sale now that a lot of the world has gone digital. But I just really have never looked into that.
I found a high school. It was an old high school for sale out in eastern Tennessee, and I want to say it was like $76,000, but it included the entire high school, including the indoor pool, plus all of the track and field area, and it ended up being like 46 acres for $76,000.
That's crazy. It's probably full of like lead paint and asbestos and built under power lines and all that kind of stuff, I imagine, right?
But again, 10 to 20 people all pitching in $5,000 a piece.
Yeah.
You can remediate that shit.
That's crazy. No, I'd never, I mean, I guess I just haven't paid that much attention. No.
So you really have to keep an open mind when you're looking for this stuff.
Yep.
And while you're doing this, you can kind of set up expedient perimeters that don't involve, a fleet of backhoes and bulldozers and a truckload of 11 Bravos with e-tools, because you're never going to find them. They're all on smoke break.
They're all the 11 Bravos they're on smoke break right now. Plus it's hot out.
They'll get back to you when the E4 Mafia reconvenes.
Right.
They do make these devices on Amazon. and you can get them a whole bunch of different places, but it's a 12 gauge shotgun perimeter alarm. They are very loud and they let people know that they have been spotted. Because it uses the primer from a shotgun shell, and as soon as that cord is ripped, trip cord, anything like that, it goes off and it lets you know, hey, you need to turn around or something bad is going to happen. There are times when that can be valuable and times when it's not. If you don't want people to know that they have crossed a boundary, but you want to know that they are there, infrared perimeter alarm systems, they tell kind of a remote base station what area has a trespasser, but the trespasser does not know that they've been spotted. Think that laser trap that you see in all of the high-tech spy movies. You can buy those for your home use now. And if you set it above your dog's head height, uh, the dog can go underneath it, no problems, but somebody walking through doesn't even see it because it's an infrared beam. You know exactly where they are and they don't know that you can see them. And obviously that's going to require power, batteries, something like that. So there are tactical advantages and disadvantages to both. If you really want to ruin somebody's day and you set up a tripwire, you can do all kinds of things with it. You can get it to light a Roman candle off. Are you increasing your chances of starting a forest fire? Absolutely. Are they going to know that they crossed that line? Absolutely. The 12 gauge shotgun primer or 12 gauge shotgun shells, it is illegal in the United States to booby trap with intent to maim or harm.
Right.
So just be aware of that. But you can do a lot of things and either let people know that they have crossed that line or not. And that's going to come down to what you are comfortable with and what assets you have to protect. You can even steer people on your property by setting off different alarms in different places. And you can kind of create funnels and flows where the natural path is leading up this dry creek bed. One trap
Yeah.
sends them up that way.
Yeah, I get it. So there are tactical advantages to letting people know that they've been spotted, because then you're right. They're naturally going to probably run one direction or another. So you can kind of funnel people the way you want them to. With those IR alarms, I have a couple of those. I use them. It's pretty cool. I'm getting good enough with them that I can tell when it's a deer or not because it rings based on like that cadence. And so anything that's tall and four-legged, I can actually usually tell what it is now. And it's not like the Catherine Zeta-Jones movie where you just like there's a spray you buy and then all of a sudden the laser beam shows up. That's actually not how it works. But yeah, those are pretty good. Something else to think about. One of the really big ones is the accessibility and your route planning to get there. So think about the distance from home. It needs to be far enough to escape that immediate danger, but close enough to reach within a reasonable time frame. Like you want it to be a couple hours, maybe a few hours by car, maybe it's a day or two on foot if necessary. Like Chris talked about, at least 50, 100, maybe 100 miles. I have a friend, a very good prepper friend of mine, and he told me once that you want to be more than a half a tank of gas away from a major city for your bug out location, because most people don't have a half a tank of gas in their car. And also it's kind of funny when people use super off like units of measure, like half a tank of gas. I guess like Americans will do anything to avoid using the metric system.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
you
We're terrible about it.
yeah. And this was a while ago when, before we had like hybrids and EVs and things like that. So he's like, hey, if your standard car has a 300-mile gas tank, you want to be 150 miles away from somewhere, because most people just won't be able to get to you. If the gas stations aren't pumping gas, then they'll be stuck and you won't. Something else when we're talking about the route planning, having multiple routes. So having a place where you can plan primary and secondary routes and anticipate that main roads and highways may be blocked or congested or just dangerous. So including routes that maybe you could use on foot or on horse or bicycle or dirt bike if you have to. So that the terrain is very important. Consider the terrain between your home and your bug out location. Is this passable in all weather conditions? Is it passable by all these other means of travel? So these are all very important things to think about when you're thinking about where to go. How you get there is really just as important. So can you be stealth on this route? So if you're traveling by foot, can you maintain a low profile? Can you avoid detection? Can you be gray man if you have to bug out on foot? Because think about it, if it's only an interstate highway between you and where you want to go, it's going to be very hard to keep that silhouette down. And again, you're only going to be able to travel at night. So having somewhere that maybe has a more forested route to it would be cool. And remember, having a printed map, because you may know the primary or even the secondary route, but what if you need to use back roads or trails or even like the train tracks or the power lines like we talked about on the bug out vehicle episode? So get a MyTopo map. You can get this custom made between your home and your bug out location. And that could quite literally save your life. If you've got all of these different routes and you're looking at them on your MyTopo, and if my primary and my secondary and my tertiary route are all closed, I see that there's elevated train tracks, I can still get over that body of water. I see that I can still make it over this bridge that isn't a footbridge or isn't a car bridge, those kinds of things. So having that map and having those routes planned really can quite literally save your life.
Yeah, you don't want to be stuck in the middle of the night on the highway going from gas station to gas station avoiding headlights. You want to be able to get there in one shot,
Yeah.
maybe a couple of days if you've got to go on foot, but you want to be able to get there without being noticed. And that's something that you have to think about in your planning, because if it's 500 miles away, if you're doing 20 miles a day, that's a while. That's a month on the road on foot.
Right. We're talking
So,
about food and water, and that's just not practical. You're right.
and speaking of water, let's talk about some of the essential resources and kind of that self-sufficiency, because water is paramount to any bug out location. It is having a reliable, sustainable, and easily accessible source of clean water, whether it is a well, a spring, a year-round stream, a lake. That's kind of non-negotiable. You still have to plan for filtration, purification, things like that, but having the actual water itself, that's going to keep you alive more than anything else. Um, Another thing to look for is arable land. And for those who forgot what arable means from,
I was going to ask.
third grade,
Yeah.
it's good quality soil and sufficient sunlight for gardening, growing crops, growing your own food source. That's what arable land is. That's actually why uh, when Lewis and Clark were crossing on their expedition, they called almost all of Kansas and Nebraska the Great American Desert because of the sand hills. It was just non-arable land to them because they didn't have any sort of technological advantage. And now that's our breadbasket of the United
Right.
States.
That's where the corn comes from now.
Bingo. So that's understanding that you may have to put some work into it to get it to be arable. Perfectly fine as long as you're willing to put in the effort. But along that line, know what your wild edibles are. Have your Bible of edible plants, venomous animals, poisonous plants, poisonous animals, things like that. Um, you know, are you going to be looking for someplace where you can hunt and fish? Are you looking at a stocked lake, or are you looking at just that random deer tripping off your IR sensor in the middle of the night and you go chase it down with a machete? You need to have all of this kind of planned out. What kind of shelter are you looking at? Are you looking at purchasing something with an existing structure like a cabin or a small home or even a tiny home, or even one of those bigger sheds that you can get from Home Depot or Lowe's? those with insulated walls would make great hunting cabins.
Oh yeah, like a tough shed, 100%. You can absolutely insulate those, and those are great little. I mean, it'll keep you warm and dry and not dead.
Exactly. And they can all be fortified. If it's not a flat, level, defensible spot to park your bug out vehicle or your camper in, you can fortify the actual structure to at least be resistant to 9 millimeter fragmentation. Maybe it's not going to stop 5.56 or 30 carbine, but every little bit counts. What kind of natural materials do you have around? Are you looking at some place that has an abundance of timber or other materials or things like that you can really build your own 1800s style log cabin? Or are you looking at having a hardened structure where you're putting up sheet metal panels, things like that, to make it look like it's absolutely worthless to raid? Because you do need protection from the elements. That structure or that location should be able to protect you from kind of some of the local weather extremes that we talked about: heat, cold, wind, rain, snow, anything that can happen. It's going to happen, and you're not going to have warning if everything has gone to hell. Just you're not going to have that 7-day outlook. You're probably going to have the NOAA radio station still, but that may not be enough warning. And then you also have to consider your energy. The potential for renewable energy sources like solar or hydro or geothermal. Um, or you need to consider access to fuel, whether that's firewood, oil, kerosene, natural gas. What are you heating the home with? How are you continuing your own quality of life, so to say? All of these factors really have to come into it. And some of them may be more expensive to solve than others. Some of them may be easier to solve than others. You just have to look at it holistically and figure out what's going to be best for you, your risk matrix, and your plan.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about, the environmental and sort of the geographic considerations. Like what if there's, you're somewhere where you get forest fires, earthquakes or whatever. So, something I always think about that may seem counterintuitive is finding some place that is not perfect, because every single person wants to bug out to this perfect area, right? That idyllic, lake with stocked with trout and it's beautiful year round and whatever. Maybe your area doesn't even have that kind of thing. But, if you plan to be somewhere that is maybe less accessible to water, like where the water is, but maybe it is a little less accessible. Maybe it's got to be filtered. Maybe you need a rain barrel to access the water, and you're harvesting off your roof. Maybe it gets cold in the winter and your water gets hard. Uh, maybe it requires a hike or a technical drive up a mountain. These will all help filter out the wanderers and pirates and the marauders. I just think that finding somewhere that not every other person in the city has thought about, I think is really important. That you're going to have to think of somewhere that maybe is a little less perfect, and that's just going to filter out a lot of those people.
You're not really looking for a vacation spot. You're looking for a
Right.
survival spot.
Yeah, you're not looking for a vacation spot. That's exactly right. But somewhere that has a lower natural disaster risk is going to be huge. Because like you said, you may not have that NOAA radio anymore. You're not going to have that weather outlook. So finding somewhere that just isn't at risk for those things. So avoiding areas that are prone to specific disasters like flooding, for example. Those low-lying areas near major rivers can be subject to flooding. Heavily forested and dry regions, especially in the western U.S. where I am, are very prone to forest fires. So you're going to have to think about that there's not going to be somebody there to fight those wildfires for you. So that area has to be very defensible to those forest fires, or you need to take that risk out of the equation. Earthquakes, that's one that's a little tougher to predict, but where the fault lines are. Where we are going to have earthquakes and where we probably aren't. The hurricane and tornado areas, we've talked a little bit about that on the show before, right? Where coastal areas, tornado alley, probably not the best place to bug out to. And then the climate. So considering the climate throughout the year. Does it have extreme heat? Because right now you have air conditioning, but you probably aren't going to have that. Or the extreme cold. So can you defend against that? Is it somewhere with enough wood and you know how you can heat your bug out location? Then maybe the cold isn't that big of a deal to you. But even the topography is something you have to think about. Like high ground, like you said in Utah, it's generally more preferred because it's defensible, and like I said above, it's probably not floodable. But avoid being in that kill zone or that easily observable location, because if you've got this great defensible location on a hill, then you're just begging for someone who's hungrier than you to siege you out of that place.
Precisely. And that's where a lot of people don't take all of these considerations into account when they're planning for stuff, because they'll buy a fully functional bunker or build one, and they're just setting up a big old target on their back.
Right.
It's really, really easy to sneak around the outside of a place and get photos and understand what the terrain looks like and build a battle plan, because it's static. It doesn't change over time.
Sure.
So that's where your gray man comes in a lot. Let's talk a little bit about kind of that long-term sustainability and maintenance of this property or location, whatever you want to call it. Are you able to stockpile? Because the ability to store significant amounts of food, water, medical supplies, tools, other essentials, you're potentially going to run into storage capacity problems. A little 10 by 10 tough shed is not necessarily going to hold your 20 years of long-term shelf life food alone.
Right.
But maintenance, how often can you visit to maintain that location? If it is on a rugged or difficult access mountain road, are you going to be able to get there, or is there going to be a tree in your way when you finally do need to get up there? How often can you actually get up there for that year-round maintenance? Do you need to clean the gutters? Do you need to check the water system to make sure that it's not full of mud? How often can you do that, and how can you plan for that? Do you need just a bigger well pipe? Maybe that's your solution. Maybe it's you go out once a year, clear cut all of the new saplings that have popped up, and you're done. And then you get to hay bale stuff for future chicken cooping or whatever you need it for. Waste management, and this is kind of your specialty area. How are you going to get rid of the poop, human
Right.
waste, other refuse? Going back to episode 8, our poop episode, you are far more likely to die of something from the Oregon Trail video game before you ever engage in any sort of angry group of marauders. So how do you manage that? And then how do you communicate with your group if you're outside of the world from your bug out location? Are you using a radio? Are you using a satellite phone? Are you using smoke signals, VS17 panels, and the semaphores that the
Oh
Navy
yeah.
used?
Your high vis panels, right?
How are you actually communicating, not just over distance, but clearly, effectively, and concisely?
So Campbell's soup cans and a very, very long string.
You might want to make it a steel string, like
Oh,
16th inch
yeah.
cable.
And you get good reverb out of that. That might be the way to do it for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's true what you said about the human waste, because right now we've got those sewers and everybody talks about that. They're like, "Oh yeah, the sewers will work." Or even when they don't, I can take that 5-gallon bucket of water and dump it at the back of my toilet. But oh man, if you're trying to start from scratch and you just think you can keep digging little cat holes somewhere, it's just that is not sustainable. You're exactly right.
You are eventually going to dig in one of the spots that you've already taken a
You,
dump, and
you
you're
are.
not going to be happy.
Yeah, and it probably isn't going to be, totally consumed by the earth again. Something else you have to consider, and this is funny to talk about this in the bug out location episode, but you have to talk about your skills. Like, do you and your group have the skills necessary to survive and thrive in that chosen location. Are you a farmer? Is it good arable land, like you said? Are you a hunter? Are there enough deer and other wildlife and game there to take? First aid in that area is a big one. Do you have people that can do security for the location you have chosen? I feel like people just think that they're going to go out and hunt and somehow just survive indefinitely. And I hear this more, believe it or not, from the non-hunters. But
Yeah, good luck.
you know what I mean? But let me throw a quick statistic at you. There are somewhere around 30 million deer in the US, and there are somewhere around 350 million people in the US. So I do not like my odds of getting a deer. And that's just the one deer. And how long before they would be just completely decimated without rule of law? If everybody just thought, well, there's no more government, no more law, I'm just going to go take my deer out of season now. You've got, like less than a 1 in 10 chance of getting one deer before every deer in the country is totally gone forever.
Over hunting, over fishing, you're going to run into all kinds of problems because people don't understand how that balance is struck and why the lottery system for a lot of species is in
Right.
place.
Yeah.
So we could run into food source problems very quickly from people who don't know how to hunt. I almost guarantee they don't know how to actually process the animal.
Right. And
So
use every part of that animal and all those kinds of things. So yeah, you're going to be in a world of hurt if you think you can just go out and survive off the wild game meat out there, because I think a lot of people think they're going to do that, and that's just a whole lot of people that are going to injure animals and lose them probably, or not know how to clean them and not know how to harvest them correctly. There's just so many issues in the real world when we start talking about that stuff. You know what I mean?
very, very much so. Somebody's going to take a shot at a deer, wound it, and then the pack of wild dogs from the kennel that got released is going to take the rest of it. And it's not something that you want to really think about, but it's something you have to think about. Are
Yeah,
you,
100%.
and when you're talking about that, are you also looking at what are your skills with animal husbandry?
Yeah, yeah. Are you gonna take the chickens from the chicken coop and take them up to your new bug out location? And yeah, guess what? It gets really, really cold in the winter, and maybe your chickens or your goats or whatever you thought you'd take with you aren't going to make it. I mean, I'm in an area that does get maybe one or two really decent freezes a year, but I have to take care of the chickens and insulate my bees. If I thought I was going to go to a bug out location that was in a different climate where maybe I got 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 deep freezes a year, I know for a fact my bees aren't going to make it. So you have to think about that. Yeah, how are your animal husbandry skills? That's a really good point. Um, and there's a lot of other personal factors about this, like your comfort level. And I think this is something that people just don't think enough about. Are you comfortable living in that isolated and worse, potentially primitive environment for an extended period of time? Like Chris, you've probably slept in a hole you dug yourself. I really like to stay in the Hilton most nights, even though I do get out in the field every once in a while. Um, but I'm comfortable for a week, maybe out in the bush, sleeping on the ground. I'm comfortable with that. But more than that, I don't know how good I would be at that. And I consider myself someone who's really does kind of roll with it. I think there are a lot of people that think that they could just go out and live in some bug out nature location. But
So you were definitely Air Force mentality.
right, 100%, 100%, man. Like, yeah, no, I've slept on base before, and I've had to sleep kind of out in the bush a bit, and I enjoy the backpacking and stuff. But dude, that's like a weekend, and then you got to find me a Dairy Queen. Like, it would be tough to spend weeks or months in a potentially primitive environment. That would just be tough, I think, for a lot of people that have the fantasy about bugging out into the hills with a backpack full of MREs and you're, 5.56 and you're just going to make it work. I think that there are a lot of people that are going to be very, very hungry and very, very cold.
And you also have to look at, if you are designing, your ultimate bug out location, maybe you've got the perfect spot of land. You want to build that 2-story tough shed and insulate the crap out of it, and you're just going to disappear off the grid. Well, okay, great. But you also wanted to include a DVD player and a TV so that you can stay entertained. You also wanted to include heating and cooling. And what is that doing to your power budget? How are you going to maintain that? So rather than spending 12 hours a day in the fields, farming, tending to your crops, tending to your livestock, going hunting and surviving, you're spending 3 hours of that just cleaning off solar panels so that you can watch a DVD when you get home at night. Like there is a balance and there's a budget for everything, whether it's food, water, power, it doesn't matter. You really have to think about that and plan for it ahead of time before you just start breaking ground on, this is my new bug out location.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And then there's also the group dynamics of it, right? Is this a group bug out location? So you have to ensure that everyone in your group is aligned on the plan and on the responsibilities, because you're right, you may cherry pick your best friends and all their skill sets and say, well, you are a medical professional of some kind, I've got a place for you. And that person may say, yeah, I'm the doctor, I wear a suit to work every day, and I don't get my hands dirty. So you have to think about the group dynamics. Does everybody in your group not just understand what uh why they're there and what their skill set is, but also what their responsibilities are? Because things are going to get really communist really quick when everybody bugs out to the wilderness together.
Yes, and you could also have that person who, as soon as they touch crops or walk through the field, everything dies around them.
Yeah.
But they're an absolute genius when it comes to, you know, power or engineering or mechanical or something like
Sure.
that. So you have to understand at more than just what what is your profession? What did you do before the collapse? You have to understand where their actual strengths are, and that's where building that relationship with people that you can trust is so critical, because you may have somebody who all they're good for is security and just sounding the alarm, and that's quite it. They
Yeah,
they are just a drain on resources otherwise.
you made me think about, like, yeah, what was your job before the collapse there? Did you see the remake of Dawn of the Dead with Sarah Polley and Mekhi Phifer when
Oh
they're at the
yes,
mall?
one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
and there's like the one dude, I forget his name. He's been in a ton of stuff. I've seen him in a bunch of things, but he's he's giving out orders. He's like, okay, you do this and we do this and I do this. And Mekhi Phifer was like, man, what'd you do before all this? Were you like special forces or something? And he looks at him, he goes, I sold TVs at Best Buy.
Yep, yep.
Like, and so what, we're supposed to listen to the TV salesman? So yeah, you're exactly right. The group dynamics, people are going to have to understand, yeah, what their skill set is, why they're there, but also what responsibilities they would have if you're just going to go bug out to the middle of nowhere. Because yeah, that primitive environment is going to get sketchy pretty quick for a lot of people.
You also have to take into consideration how people deal with stress, especially if you're in a bug out location that is kind of your group or your community. You're going to be looking at everything through a very, very different lens when shit hits the fan. So, how do people deal with stress? Are you just creating a time bomb of, you know, murder scenes across your property? Or can people actually work together to accomplish common goals? If you don't take that into consideration, you could be setting yourself up for failure without realizing it.
That's a really good point. I think we all have that friend who's like the freak out friend, that just like absolutely loses their shit when anything happens and they just don't have the ability to like improvise, adapt, and overcome and like fix it.
Like acorns falling on SUVs.
Like acorns falling on SUVs. That's it. That's a perfect example. I was actually gonna say, like a buddy of mine, that yeah, it's like you get one little scratch in the car or something. It's just game over, man. And I think about that you've got to think about how people deal with stress, because yes, if it is a small group and you're going to talk about some very uncomfortable things about rationing food or rationing healthcare, you're going to have an idea how those conversations are going to go down before you have to have them in real life.
Yeah, and this is more than just checking your buddy for ticks in those specialty areas. This is you
or,
have to do
or
that on a daily
leeches.
basis. Yeah, and you're going to be grinding this out. The end of the world as we know it, Teotihuacan, is not going to be a pleasant experience for most people unless you are one of those 1/10 of 1%ers already. It's not going to be the same thing as it is today. So you have to adapt for stress. You have to plan for it. You have to understand the psychological taxes that come with everything. And this is not an easy thing to wrap your head around. So it really is important to talk it out ahead of time. And these are all, everything that we have gone over is a list of really good topics to go over. And we could probably spend a week going over all of this in more detail. But if you really could take one thing away from this episode, it's that choosing a bug out location is a significant investment of time, money, effort. This is a dynamic process that's going to require research, scouting, regular reevaluation, because every time some new hazard or hurdle pops up on your risk matrix, it could completely change your choice of bug out location and priority status.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't think about that. That your risk matrix, as things change on the risk matrix, you're going to have to go back over all of the things we just talked about, every one of those topics, and say, oh man, maybe someone in my group is now wheelchair bound, or maybe there are new dietary restrictions, or there are allergies like you mentioned, or any of those things that show up, or maybe you do have the perfect bug out location that ticks all the boxes. Maybe we just read through all this stuff and we said, hey, here's all the things we think are important, and in your mind you're going, yep, the spot I have, tick tick tick, and you're checking the boxes. And tomorrow that place gets burnt down or has the earthquake or the flood or the fire or the hurricane, or you know gets repossessed by the Bureau of Land Management or something like that, you are going to have to you're going to have to reevaluate that bug out location based on your current risk matrix. Maybe they built a new bridge, maybe they took one bridge out. Yeah, maybe that area is no longer as defensible because the the Warehouser or the Boise Cascade or the company that owned all the forest land around there, maybe this is their 20-year cycle and they cut all those trees down. That's going to vastly change the dynamics and the environment around that bug out location.
I completely agree. And do you remember the movie? It was on Netflix. Leave the World Behind. It had Ethan Hawke and
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was a great movie. They did a good job. There were a few plot holes. The fact they had power like way too long was crazy to me, but yeah, that was actually pretty good.
it did have a few plot holes. It was overall an entertaining story, and I'm trying to not give super spoilers. But at the very end of the movie, when she finally finds the copy of Friends,
Uh-huh.
you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Notice how nobody else showed up there.
Yeah.
She was completely alone. So that was a perfectly outfitted and beautiful location. Great spot, had everything they possibly could have wanted, and the owners never showed up. So they never got there. How did that fall into their plan?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true, because you may have the perfect idyllic spot, but maybe you can't make it for one reason or another. There's a whole lot of reasons why you might not be able to make it to your spot. And that's why, yeah, having that map and planning that out, having that primary and that secondary and that tertiary means to travel and know if we can't make it by car, but having that route and having a secondary route and a tertiary route where you know that you can take a car or you can go by foot if you have to, or like I said, maybe it is horse, maybe it is bicycle, maybe it is dirt bike, but those may all be different routes. Like the train track thing, that was genius. Like Alex told me that, and that was like the one thing I really took away from that episode, that I was like, wow, I'd never thought about the fact that if you've got some decent tires and good ground clearance, you can drive across a trestle bridge.
And for me, it was the power line easements.
The
Yeah,
power
same
line
thing.
easements, exactly. But either one of those, you know, you're not going to go across the train track bridge on a dirt bike. That's not going to happen. And you're probably not going to do it on a horse.
You could, but that would be the most rickety and nerve-wracking ride that you could imagine. That would be so
Yeah,
painful.
it would just, yeah, exactly. It would just that. So you have to think about that. If your backup bug out vehicle is a dirt bike, then maybe you're not going to take some of those routes that you would on foot or with a vehicle.
And a lot of this, everything that we've gone over in this episode, this can quickly become very overwhelming. So
Oh, for sure.
if this is something that you're maybe new to or you haven't considered or anything along those lines, I would actually recommend starting with a designated rendezvous point and then gradually improve it into a more robust bug out location as your resources and your time allow. And a rendezvous point could be, you and your neighbors that are part of your plan, and your best friend from down the street, and your extended family from the other side of town. You all meet at one pizza joint, disperse everything between vehicles evenly, and then go. But you have to have that as part of your plan. And that's where those MyTopo maps really come in handy, is everyone can have a copy of the same map with the same routes highlighted on it. And if you do that, again, we do have a link to MyTopo through our website, stakeholderprepping.com. You can customize your maps on there. You can print out as many copies as you need. You can do overlays and all kinds of different things. But having everyone in your group with access to the same information helps to standardize your entire plan and make it kick off a lot smoother. You're not recovering from the get-go. You actually have momentum going into it.
Yeah, you said something that made me think about, I think it was our urban bug out episode where we talked about having a rally point or a muster point where maybe it's a friend's property, maybe it's a business owner in the city, maybe it's your storage unit that everybody has access to. You could have a rally point like that where that's way less overwhelming than what we just got done talking about. Having just the rally point where everybody knows you've got your pooled resources. Maybe some people want to go somewhere where they need different resources. And if you've got those all accessible by your group and you've just got a rally point, then you can get all your heads together and think about, okay, are we going to the bug out location or are we going somewhere else? And that makes this whole thing a lot more bite-sized and consumable to just say, start with the rally point, start with the muster point, start with that spot that everybody has access to, and maybe it is just your small cache where everybody can get to and everybody in your group can get to. Because yeah, like you said, leave the world behind, where certain people didn't show up, so that may actually change your bug out location. If you've got the perfect location but you know for sure that you're going to need your friend who's a sharpshooter, right? You're going to need that guy on your sniper team, Chris, that was the crack shot, and then he doesn't show up. Well, that may actually change the bug out location you're going to go to.
It very well could, but having that rendezvous point, that RP, the cache site, it could even be a storage facility in the middle of your area. and everyone shows up at the same storage facility, you have a cache of food, medical supplies, fuel, and water there. Everyone fills up their tanks. You don't have to worry about staying in line at the gas station. You've already got it taken care of. And you just set up a rotation of who's responsible for checking on the fuel, checking on the food, making sure mice haven't gotten into it, things like that. And you all meet up there, fill up tanks, load up, and go. You're already gone.
That's a really good idea. It's a great place to start, is just that rally point for the group where you can put your heads together and decide whether or not we're going to go to a particular bug out location based on the risk matrix and based on the particular event that you're bugging out from.
Exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think of is you can take all of this in bite-sized chunks and make it manageable. It's just going to come down to what do you have capacity for.
Yeah,
So,
that's a really good point.
do you think anything else needs to go into this one?
Yeah, I think this kind of wraps it up for me.
Fantastic. Well, we will see you back here next week. And until then, remember, you are your own stakeholder. We'll see you then.